On First at 9 this Thursday, the 22nd of May 2025. Salt crisis. Delayed salt consignment from India expected to arrive tomorrow. Government promises to end the shortage within 2 weeks. Won't back down. Operation Sindoor is against terrorism and not Pakistan, says Indian envoy in Sri Lanka. Reiterates the importance of cooperation between neighbouring nations for lasting regional peace. Recovering economy. Sri Lanka expecting a third consecutive year with a current account surplus, says the central bank governor. Persisting issues. Government sector still harbours corrupt officials even if the political arena is cleaned up, says Minister of Agriculture.
Cinec Campus Open Day. මේ මාස 3 වෙනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට Cinec Campus පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9, brought to you by the nation's most trusted news source, Derana. I'm Tharindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now taking you to your stories making headlines this evening, Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, Santosh Jha, addressing the recent India-Pakistan tensions and explaining the rationale behind Operation Sindoor, said India's fight is against terrorism and not a neighbouring country. Joining our current affairs programme at Hyde Park with Indivari Amuwatta, High Commissioner Jha further clarified that while a temporary pause in Operation Sindoor has been announced, it is not a ceasefire. He also signalled India's readiness to respond to future threats and emphasised its resolve not to be deterred by what it called nuclear blackmail or support for terrorists. The Indian envoy also underscored that cooperation between neighbouring nations is essential for the region's prosperity and stability.
The Prime Minister mentioned Operation Sindoor is paused but not over. What does this mean?
It means that there is no ceasefire. There is only a temporary halt in hostilities. Operation Sindoor is now the established policy against terror emanating from Pakistan. It essentially means three things. One, that if there is a terrorist attack in future, that India will give a befitting response. The second is that we will not be subjected to nuclear blackmail. And third, that we will not distinguish now between the terrorists and the government that sponsors them.
Are you saying India is not at war with Pakistan?
We are at war against terrorism. Now, if that terrorism is perpetrated from Pakistan by the government there supporting those terrorists, then that doesn't change the character of the war. It still is against the terrorists.
We saw the ceasefire agreement coming in. This was first announced by US President Donald Trump on social media, that he brokered this peacemaking deal. I believe India is seen as a superpower in our region. How the United States, a close ally of India, couldn't wait until India announced.
We, on the 10th morning, struck 13 of their air bases, locations, military locations, as well as. It is at this point that the Pakistanis became very nervous and they sought a cessation of hostilities. They called us. We have a hotline between India and Pakistan, the Director General of Military Operations. They sent a message. They wanted to engage us. We had an engagement at 3:35 on the 10th of May. On that basis, we decided that we will have a temporary pause in hostilities. So this is completely bilateral. There is no third-party role available in an India-Pakistan situation. So let me dispel any doubt with regard to third-party involvement or mediation.
And Sri Lanka fought a war against terrorism and says Sri Lanka fought against countries, states that had double standards when it came to terrorism as well. What would India's position be here in dealing with countries that are allies of India but also have links with the terrorist organization?
We have been all along saying that we must not have any compromise on the issue of terrorism, that we must not only condemn it but combat it with all means in our dishonor disposal. We need to act against terrorism in all its forms and manifestation, that no form of terrorism can ever be justified. And we have been very steadfast on that.
How can India bring the region together to fight terrorism but not destabilize countries in our region?
See, again, I would say that destabilizing will happen if one country in the region continues to perpetrate terrorism. It is not us that is responsible for it, the country that is perpetrating terrorism that is responsible for it. India is just, in fact, dispatched 5 groups of senior MPs and former diplomats who are going to different countries around the world to brief them on what has happened in India and the kind of response that we have provided, and also to brief them on the new doctrine that is called the Operation Sindoor. And the idea is to build up an opinion once again into and create an international coalition against terrorism. It's very important that we don't forget, just because some countries are living in peace relatively and that the scourge of terrorism is not impacting them directly today.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa urges government to take proactive steps regarding the new strain of COVID virus that is reported to be spreading in Asian countries. The opposition leader also called attention to shortages in medicines and medical equipment and called on the government to take immediate action.
At present, there is a serious shortage of medicine. 180 types of medicines are in short supply. Additionally, there is a shortage of 50 essential drugs in the hospital system. There is also a dearth of equipment in the health sector. With such a situation at hand, we have gotten to know that in countries such as Singapore, Thailand, India and Hong Kong, a variant of COVID named LP8.1 is spreading. However, no test or genetic analysis has been performed yet. We believe that the government should conduct an examination in this regard. Special attention should be given to the patients in hospitals who exhibit symptoms of the virus, and attention should also be given to the impact this could have. This is a responsibility of the government. Furthermore, there is a shortage of chikungunya testing kits. We urge the health minister and the government to find test kits and take immediate action regarding this issue.
Minister of Agriculture, Livestock, Land and Irrigation KD Lanka says the root causes of Sri Lanka's collapse were politics and the government sector. Addressing a gathering today, the minister claimed that theft, corruption and fraud have been eliminated from politics while the government sector remains corrupt.
The inauguration of 500 Highland franchise outlets island-wide took place at the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Land and Irrigation today under the patronage of Minister KD Lanka. This company, Milco Private Limited and the National Livestock Development Board were about to be sold. There is still an ongoing agreement with the Indian dairy company, Amul, and therefore we lack the freedom to work with these two companies. We are currently working on a strategy on how to withdraw from this agreement with India without creating a significant diplomatic issue and provide freedom for these two companies. We have local investors who always ask to connect with us. Recently, a certain investor requested to meet me and asked for a large amount of land owned by the NLDB. He intends to export durian to Malaysia, for which he requested 500 acres of land. However, we refused to do so. If we provide all state-owned land for products that bring in foreign exchange, we will lack land for local food production. Everything has gone to the private sector, and that's how most products started to contain poison, since they were mainly focused on profits. However, consumers never faced a problem regarding quality when it comes to products by the state sector. Nevertheless, all state-owned companies were left bankrupt. When state institutions fall, the government sector also falls behind. Back in those days, government employees were respected. But what has happened now? People assume that they are corrupt. The respect the state sector had diminished during the previous economic cycle. The whole country collapsed because of two sectors. One is politics and the other is the state sector. People still blame only those two sectors. We currently live in a transformational era, and this period is similar to the inauspiciousness time. We believe that we are transforming politics. We have completely stopped theft, corruption and fraud in politics. We are able to assure the citizens of that. At the moment, it is the state sector that has become a den of thieves, not politics. Therefore, we remind the general public that they have the responsibility of taking legal action if a bribe is solicited from them. Otherwise, things cannot be changed even if we have the desire to do so. We cannot change this country otherwise.
The shipment of salt from India, which was expected yesterday, has been delayed due to adverse weather and is expected to arrive in Sri Lanka tomorrow. Government plans to distribute it early next week to address the ongoing salt shortage. In Parliament, the opposition accused that the government's mismanagement of the situation has caused a salt mafia to arise in the country. Meanwhile, Jaffna District Parliamentarian MP Ramanathan Arjuna's conduct at the Elephant Pass Sultan, where he attempted to halt salt production in the north from being distributed to the south, drew criticism from both the government and opposition.
A shipment of salt imported from India was scheduled to arrive in Sri Lanka last night. The shipment consists of a total of 3,050 metric tons of salt, 250 metric tons imported by the private sector, and 2,800 metric tons imported by the state-run National Salt Limited. However, National Salt Limited said the shipment may have been delayed due to prevailing adverse weather and that it would arrive in the island tomorrow evening. The chairman of the company, Gayan Vellala, said following its arrival, the imported salt would be released to the local market by next Monday or Tuesday, thereby alleviating the prevailing salt shortage. Meanwhile, the persistent shortage of salt was also discussed in Parliament today.
I would like to bring attention to an article which was published in the Daily Morning newspaper.
Indian salt shipment arrived. The Minister of Trade and Commerce, Vasantha Samarasinghe, said, of this, 250 metric tons have been imported by the private sector, while the remaining 2,800 metric tons were brought in by the state-run National Salt Company.
Lanka Salt Limited said that it will import this consignment and that the import bill for the imports from India has already been prepared. Afterwards, the private sector gets the opportunity to import. The price of salt has increased from 130 to 350 rupees. A salt mafia has been created and government must take responsibility for it. Salt producers in Puttalam requested imports since December.
December මාසේ ඉඳලා පුත්තලමේ නිෂ්පාදකයෝ කියනවා ආනයන කරන්නටයි කියලා.
ඉතින් මේක ස්වභාවික ක්‍රියාවලියක්. එතකොට අපි දෙසැම්බර් මාසේ වැස්සේ නැහැ කියලා හිතලා පටන් ගත්තත්
This is done according to a natural process. Even if we assume there was no rainfall in December, it will still take 7 months for salt production under regular wind and sun. This opportunity was not there, and that is why we decided to import 30,000 metric tons of salt at the beginning of December. Actually, the decision we should have made was to open the door for the private sector to import salt instead of the government. However, we did not do that because only 3 private companies imported and they increased prices. The Trade Minister and I held discussions to put a stop to that price manipulation and decided to import via the National Salt Company and distribute it to everyone. The shipment was dispatched on May 16th. But what happened then? We imported the shipment from the port of Gujarat. It was closed for 5 days due to the conflict between India and Pakistan. That's why the imported salt is arriving now. I saw some questions regarding closure of an apparel production plant in Katunayaka. Actually, only one part of the plant has been closed, and it doesn't mean that the whole apparel sector has collapsed. However, I saw in newspapers that an individual connected with a certain TV channel had claimed that entrepreneurship has completely collapsed. However, that person did not speak to me, who's the Minister of Industries, Entrepreneurship. I do not hold great wisdom, nor do I have telepathy to know that some apparel factories have wings that operate on a loss. If I had such power, I would go there. I heard what MP Arjuna did in Elephant Pass. He brought 10 workers of the salt company in Elephant Pass and told them not to send salt from the northern province to the southern province. This is ridiculous. Provincially, there's no such difference. All salt production belongs to the whole country. Leave those differences in the past. They no longer exist. Since 2012, there was a product by the Puttalam Salt Companies named Roger Salt, and we actually changed that. If the salt is produced in Elephant Pass, it must be known as Elephant Pass Salt. After we made those changes, he said that this should be renamed as Roger Salt since it belongs to President Anura Dissanayake. I kindly request you not to say such idiotic things, and I have to say that those workers have no problem with the name. Issues regarding salt are over now. Imports have arrived at ports and they must be distributed to shops, which will be done in 2 days. The other thing is, he requests us to change the manager of the Elephant Pass salt factory. The reason for this request is because the manager is from Kilinochchi, not from Jaffna. How can we do so? Do not attempt to do such things. The manager who used to be in Elephant Pass has now transferred to Mana, and a trade unionist supporting the government has been appointed as the manager at Elephant Pass. Therefore, people are conducting protest. I never said such lies.
How come I can be a racist? Shall we get to the parliament?
MP Handunetti stated something important. What did he say? He stated that MP Arjuna is requesting not to send salt south from Elephant Pass. We warned about this previously. Salt is not the only thing the country ran out of. The deputy minister, who was a high-ranking official of the Sri Lankan army, does not have the guts to refer to the war heroes who won independence for the country as war heroes and not soldiers. And there are 6 to 7 representatives of the police and the tri-forces who are part of this government, and they do not have the guts to refer to their troops as war heroes. There is one person who campaigned for the elections stating that he was a war hero and established a retired war heroes association. Will that be changed into retired soldiers association now?
අපි කියනවා ආණ්ඩුවක් විදිහටත්
I would like to state as a government and as a female representative of the Sri Lanka army that the children who died in the war are war heroes to their parents, even in the north. Similarly, children from the south who died in the war are also war heroes to their parents.
ඒ යුද්ධෙන් මිය ගිය ආදරණීය රණවිරුවෝ යුද්ධ විරුවම තමයි.
කරු අමාත්‍ය වසන්ත සමරසිංහ මැතිතුමා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේදී ප්‍රකාශ කර තිබුණා.
MP Vasantha Samarasinghe has stated in Parliament that they also invited me to join them in establishing power in local government councils. I was also informed that MP Handunnethi mentioned an issue about cobras. Furthermore, I was accused of mismanaging antigen vaccines by the fake comment army from Pelavatta, even after it was corrected by MP Nalinda Jayatissa in Parliament. We will refrain from participating in such activities in order to protect the dignity of your party, or else the NPP will be accused of joining forces with thieves and people who orchestrated the Cobra fiasco. Now, MP Vasantha Samarasinghe says that members of our party convened meetings with them in Pelavatta. For what? To continue the same mistakes from the past. Is that the government's aim? If the government is granting money and privileges with the intention of gaining votes to establish local government councils, is that considered understanding the people's wishes? I am ashamed of this. If he states that we were invited, then that's true. But that is a tragedy. What were they trying to do at the War Heroes commemoration? With what mentality is the government trying to label the war heroes who sacrificed their lives for the country as mere soldiers? This is where our president got it wrong. He has got the idea of coexistence wrong. He is making these statements without understanding the expectations of the people from the north and the south and the hopes and expectations behind the vote they granted for him. They stated something about the garment company.
කරන සියලු ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න. අර මේදී සඳහන් වුණා වගේ අපේ garment company එක next. It is a UK based company. They have couple of factories. I hope that they will not close down the rest of the factories. What they are going to close down is the factory which is in the Katunayaka free trade zone. ඇයි මේ වගේ විශාල garment.
What is the reason behind the shutdown of a big garment factory as such? What is the message we should read through this? What is the message conveyed to local entrepreneurs? That they cannot have expectations about this country, that they do not have the assurance to invest in this country. In a country like this, how can the people have expectations? What expectations and dreams do they have when they wake up in the morning? They have no dreams. The people of the country wake up in the morning wondering if they will have salt for their dinner.
සිනෙක් කැම්පස් ඕපන් ඩේ මැයි මස 3 වැනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට සිනෙක් කැම්පස් පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
And now here's a look at some thoughts shared in the political arena today.
Opposition parties have the majority in Colombo, but for the first time in the history of Sri Lanka, the president is intervening in the establishment of the municipal councils. Since such involvement was not witnessed before, it is hard to say what the outcome would be. During President Maithripala's tenure, he did not have a majority power in the parliament. His party only had some 40 seats. Regardless of the number of seats, he was able to proceed with the government. Therefore, not just in the Colombo municipality, we will establish as the government in every other council. NPP took majority votes in. The attempt of the defeated parties trying to form an alliance is not democratic. It is not wrong for the party that won the majority to converse with other parties towards the establishment of power. It is a mandatory proceeding of democratic politics. Honestly, we have already established power. It is only a matter of time left till we officially announce that. We are prepared for that. A few of the independent parties are supporting the government, not all. The independent groups came to us to talk as well. NPP is meeting not just the independent groups, but they are trying to secretly meet members from our party too. A cabinet minister has personally gone to meet with MPs in the Kurunagal district, requesting help to establish power in the local councils. How embarrassing. This wouldn't have been the case if they had won. That's the issue. The leaders who have managed to sustain a shortage of salt at every house household is meeting with the members of SLPP who were elected to the parliament to convince them to support NPP to establish power. It is the NPP who took steps towards breaking the trust of the people who supported SLPP by spreading absurd rumours against us. We are not releasing the voice recordings and information regarding the secret talks held between members of our party and the NPP because of our humanity.
A British woman arrested at the Bandaranaike International Airport while in possession of nearly 50 kilograms of cannabis has complained to a British news outlet of supposed mistreatment in prison. The woman, who was travelling from Bangkok to Sri Lanka, was arrested by Sri Lanka Customs on the 12th of May at the BIA on suspicion of attempting to smuggle a 46 kilogram consignment of Kush cannabis estimated to be worth approximately 460 million rupees. However, she claims that she was unaware that there were any drugs in her luggage when she set off for Sri Lanka. The suspect, along with the seized consignment of narcotics, was handed over to the Police Narcotics Bureau for further investigations. The suspect is now detained at the Negombo prison. British newspaper Daily Mail's online counterpart Mail Online reported that she was being locked in hell jail under extreme conditions. When contacted by Derana regarding the incident, the Department of Prisons stated that she can be directed for medical facilities if required and added that she will be imprisoned under the same conditions as local prisoners. Welcome back. You're once again joining First at 9. Now in business news, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe says inflation is expected to remain lower than previously projected by the CBSL over the next 12 to 18 months. Taking this into account, the central bank has eased the overnight policy rate by 25 basis points to 7.75%, stating that it expects the measure to help steer inflation towards the 5% target. However, joining the monetary policy briefing today, Governor Dr. Veerasinghe stated that despite the current situation, Sri Lanka is expected to record a current account surplus for the third consecutive year.
The Monetary Policy Board of the Central Bank, during its meeting yesterday, has decided to reduce the overnight policy rate by 25 basis points to 7.75%, thereby easing monetary policy further. According to the CBSL, this decision was taken after considering the developments both domestically and globally. The board is of the view that this measured easing of monetary policy stance will support steering inflation towards the 5% target amidst global uncertainties and current subdued inflationary pressures.
Compared to the last review, we see inflation projection path. Last review versus this review, we see inflation is moving in the next 12 to 18 months at a lower path than we projected last review. So that's one factor. Inflation is basically, projection is also moving below lower path, but still reaching towards our target range of 5%. We still move towards 5%, but at a path which is going to be below than what we thought earlier. That's the first point. Second point, in terms of aggregate demand, compared to the last review, because of the global uncertainties, some of the geopolitical issues, even IMF has revised the global outlook a bit lower. That means even from the overall aggregate demand point of view, external demand component would certainly be lower than what we expected the last. When it comes to Sri Lankan exports, we still don't know. We have a 90-day pause. Government is discussing that. We have to wait and see what will be the outcomes. This is without taking into consideration any changes, expecting this same status quo maintaining beyond 90 days, but already there is some downward revision to the external demands. Our projection on the external side, although this external demand factor is lower, but still because of the favorable impact on the petroleum prices, as well as some adjustment in the exports, but still remittances and tourism is doing well as we expected. This is going to be a third year of current account surplus that's going to be recording in Sri Lanka. Historically, we never had 2 years, but we had only 2 years of current account surplus. It's going to be even third year of current account surplus even after full relaxation of import controls.
This current account surplus project is there a number from the increase from last?
We are looking at about 0.9% for the whole year.
In a stock update tonight, the Colombo Stock Exchange ended in positive territory with the all share price index gaining 117.46 as a result of price gains. Cargill's Dialogue Ashiata and Colombo Fort Land and Building saw price gains during today's session. Market turnover crossed 2.4 billion rupees. The S&P SL20 edged up 26.15 with high net worth and institutional investor participation noted in John Keel's Holdings, Valuable One and Union Bank. Mixed interest was observed in Dialog Asiata, Commercial Bank and Axis Engineering, while retail interest was noted in Nation Lanka Finance, Lanka Credit and Business Finance and ACME Printing and Packaging. Furthermore, foreigners closed as net buyers. Capital goods sector was the top contributor to market turnover due to John Keel's Holdings and Valuable One. The banking sector was the second highest contributor to market turnover due to Commercial Bank and Union Bank. Dialog Asiata was also among the top turnover contributors. And with that, here's a look at today's exchange rates. That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.